All right, man. How we
All
doing?
right. We are doing all right. I can't complain, honestly. Um, Welcome in everyone, first of all, to our usual
Well,
gathering. This
this is
is
this is
episode
going to be our
60.
usual gathering.
uh, I mean, it's familiar. Um, Changing some things up a little bit. But it is episode 66 of the update log, and we're back at it again. I'm Rob, your host. This is Greg, co-host. Today we had a couple things to go over. Some things we've touched on in previous episodes, but we've got a couple new things. Um, One of the first things I'd like to touch on is Sun Wukong, or Black Myth Wukong, rather, based on the Sun Wukong myth out of China. So it's a game made by, let's see here, where is the information? Pull up. Okay, yep. Black Myth Wukong is made by Game Science, it's published and developed by Game Science, which is a studio out of China. And actually, oddly enough, I came to find out that it is made up of individuals from Tencent. Now, if you've watched any of our previous episodes, you've probably heard that name before. Tencent is a Chinese-based studio. Um, they kind of do a lot of things, a lot of different games, whether it's development or publishing. Um, so they're a pretty big deal over there, pretty large corporation. And Black Myth Wukong and subsequently Game Science is actually a group of individuals who left Tencent, decided to open up their own studio, and this is essentially their first game. And what a game! What a first game! Right now, looking at Steam, and keep in mind this is Steam only, meaning this has not come to Xbox yet. I don't believe it's come to PlayStation either, but I could be wrong on that regard. But right now, as of I just opened the Steam database, 183,808 players are playing the game as we speak. Within the last within the last 24 hours, it is 1.7 million concurrent players. All-time peak, which was 6 days ago, was 2.4 million players, beating out things like Dota, Counter Strike. And keep in mind, guys, I want to illustrate something here. I want to really highlight something. This game came out 8 days ago, 9 days ago. Uh, if you're going off of Chinese time zone, 9 days ago, and it's beat
Did you
2.4
know there
million
are
already.
estimated to be more gamers in China than there is total population in the U.S.?
And then what now?
There's estimated to be more gamers in China than the total population of the.
Of the U.S.
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I'm not considering China has 1.4 billion people in it. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Did you also know that China actually requires you? I think it's China and South Korea require you to put in your government issue ID whenever you um, purchase a game. Reason being, they don't want people spending all their time on online playing video games. So they actually have, especially in China, they have a limiter. They have a limit to the how many hours you can play, I guess, in a given day or week. I thought that was interesting. Um, which makes sense now that I look back at some of the TOSs that have asked for that where applicable. I thought that was an interesting thing, interesting little tidbit. So anyway, back to the game. Black Myth Wukong again, released 8 days ago on Steam. It's been breaking records left, right, and center. 10, I think as of yesterday or a few days ago, 10 million copies have been sold uh, worldwide. 10
Mm-mm-mm.
million copies in the space of 9 days. Amounts to about $600 million USD, give or take.
We're seeing a lot more of that though. I mean, with
What do you mean?
a lot of the more recent games have come out of the gate really strong.
Yeah, I
Not
mean things
not
like
discrediting
Power,
this one at all, but I mean, it's becoming,
like kind of a
one
trend.
right one time is like, okay, yeah, this is really cool, this is something that's awesome, but then, now I think this is the third time that we've had 10 plus million copies sold within a very short period of time. um
Well, the thing, and I think there's a reason for that because those games that have reached that level of success, they're doing things different. They're taking a different approach. In the case of Black Myth Wukong, they're taking a very well-known, but an asterisk next to that because it's well-known,
very
it's a
well
well-known
known.
Chinese myth, and uh, anime fans probably know the myth as well because if you're an anime fan, you've probably watched Dragon Ball Z, and Goku is literally based off of Sun Goku or Sun Wukong. Like literally, Goku is based off of Wukong and his story. But Wukong is basically it's a Chinese myth about monkey, a pig, a monk, I think a pigeon. Pretty much go on. They're companions that go on a journey to the west, um, where Wukong is said to, at some point in time during their journey, reach enlightenment or reach nirvana. But basically, there's more to it than that. But the general premise is this individual Wukong, has a journey, learning about himself, growing as a character and an individual, eventually reaching perfect nirvana, but along the way faces, trials and tribulations, sometimes in the form of combat. Um, but Black Myth Wukong, pretty much in its own way, and I also want to preface I haven't played the game, not yet anyway. Um, but I've seen a couple of let's plays of it, and it's basically very Souls like, so like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, think that kind of game. Uh, but first of all, it looks fantastic, looks absolutely amazing. Secondly, it from what I've seen and the reviews that I've heard and read, it does boss battles very well. It innovates on what a formula that works, i.e. again going back to the Elden Ring comparison. And the story itself is just it's a really great story about a really cool and well loved character. So kudos and hats off to Game Science for really doing something different. And again, that's kind of circling back to what you said there. Things like Power World and Helldivers and Baldur's Gate 3 and the games that have come out and they've done really well. They're doing things differently,
right.
uh, which first of all, it's a boon because now they're really not they're not competing for the same trophy in the sense that they're doing the same shit. They're taking some liberties, they're taking some risk and doing things a little bit different. Which gamers, now that it's gaming in and of itself, whether you're playing video games or TTRPGs, have become mainstream. It's mainstream now. Being a gamer is mainstream. It's not like when I was growing up. When you were growing up, our parents probably told us, "Quit, wasting your time playing all those damn video games," or "Quit wasting your time." Now it's seen as acceptable, encouraged in some sense, especially if you can garner a following on any of the social medias like Twitch or YouTube and make a living off of it. Yeah, but it's more acceptable now.
Well,
And with
it
Go ahead.
makes perfect sense that it became more acceptable, and in large part because, I mean, we all grew up, and now we are, the main body of the population, I guess you could say. I mean,
Indeed, we
I
are.
played video games as a kid. You played video games as a kid. I mean, doesn't and the culturally, I would say video games have become a large part of our society. So they're no longer looked at as evil, bad things, ruining our children and our childhood.
Depends on who you ask. It could very well still be looked at in that light, but it's not anymore, which is appreciated because I think and I think also in regards to that storytell well, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself there. Um, Games have been accepted in the sense that they tell stories.
Right.
They've always told stories. They've always been a storytelling medium, but I think especially with the older generation and people who weren't really involved in that, they didn't maybe they didn't realize or didn't dawn on them that, yes, I'm playing a video game. Yes, it's fun. Yeah, there's things going on the screen, but at the core of it, it is a storytelling medium. It always has been, and it's always going to be. Now the depth and quality of that story changes from the game to game, but it's a storytelling medium. And I think people are finally coming to realize that video games are more than just picking up a controller or joysticks or whatever, and just doing that. It's
Welcome in,
storytelling.
Lord Jesus.
It's it's interactive storytelling. And yeah, welcome in, Lord Jesus. Thanks for joining us, buddy. It's good to see you around. Um, so it's really
Fantastic.
for me. We're doing pretty good. We're just talking about some recent game news. We're talking about right now. We're covering Black Myth Wukong. Have you played that game yet, Jesus? By the way, I've been meaning to ask Jesus because of your name. What's your favorite pizza?
Favorite pizza.
No, that's a it's a it's a dangerous question to ask someone what their favorite pizza is.
It's a hard one to answer.
Ah,
Okay, supreme, but I mean,
okay, Supreme.
I like some odd things on pizza. I like pineapple on pizza. I like
Here's the thing. I like pineapple pizza as well.
I like banana pepper rings.
Oh yeah, banana
Pizza.
peppers are delicious on pizza, boy. Oh
You
man,
know.
banana peppers and pepperoni or bacon. Whoo.
Hmm.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
but
Oh,
those
yeah.
aren't standard things. Those are things you got to kind of
True.
you either make it yourself or you order out for it. I mean, you can't go to the
Yeah,
store. They're getting more creative. I mean,
they are. They are.
but
Yeah, pineapple on pizza is a very divisive piece because people, I mean, if you ask Gordon Ramsay, pineapple does not belong on pizza. Apparently, anyone who thinks so is a donut, according to him. Uh,
well,
it could,
some people think they know more than they know. I guess.
yeah, considering his accolades, you mean people are inclined to believe him. Uh, but
Banana
I
pepper rings, man. Good
Yeah,
stuff
banana
on
pepper
pizza.
rings are really good. You get the nice spicy, like, almost salty flavor. Oh man, they're really
Mm,
good. Yeah.
delicious.
Side note, I actually came to because I was in the camp of no pineapple on pizza ever at all under any circumstances ever. Um, until one day I was sitting watch. And one of my buddy, she came into the barracks with a pizza in hand, and the chow hall had just closed down, and they basically couldn't get anything to eat, and I was
You were so
fucking
hungry you
starving.
decided to try the pineapple pizza,
Yeah,
huh?
she's like, yeah, I got a pizza, and she opened it as a pineapple pizza. There's nothing else on it, just fucking pineapple, and I'm like, what the? It's like, what the? What? And she's like, she's like, do you like pineapples on pizza? I'm like, no. She's like, you gotta try it. I'm like, and I was you're right. I was hungry enough. I was like, fuck it, give me a fucking slice. And I dug in, and surprisingly, I was like, okay, it's not terrible. And then I got I got introduced to things like Hawaiian pizza, like pineapple, bacon,
Absolutely.
or barbecue like pineapple, barbecue chicken and pineapple, stuff like that. So again, it's my go-tos are the chicken and bacon, bacon and onion, the atypical stuff.
Right.
But every once in a while, I'll get a pineapple pizza.
That's
Yeah, desperation led to a revelation. You are correct. I was hungry enough.
you don't be afraid to try things, be like
Mm.
that. I mean, the first
Oh
time I
yeah,
tried
absolutely.
pineapple pizza, I wasn't necessarily. I kind of looked at it, like, what is this? Um,
But it grows on you.
it does. It's good
It
stuff.
grows on you.
Then
The
you
only
add,
thing that
then
I
you take the
but
pineapple and you add banana pepper rings to it. So then you get that sweet and you get
salty.
the salty. Yeah. Oh.
Okay, salty, spicy. Okay, I might have
Mm.
to try that one day. I might have to try that. But I know we're going off on a big
Like a little
tangent here
spice to my sweet.
involving food. But one thing that I've tried, two things that I've tried, and will never ever like, no matter whatever you put on them, mushrooms and raisins. Can't stand them.
You don't like
Can't stand them.
raisins?
Texture. Well, texture and flavor. Raisins taste like crap.
All right. How about
Tastes like shit.
dates? You like dates?
Uh, yeah. Uh, uh, Neutral.
No, no,
If
we're
they're
not becoming
round.
the food channel tonight. We're just,
No, we're not becoming fruit. It just, just a nice little tangent there. But again, go circling back. Um, I mean, the industry is changing up. People's palates, speaking of food, people's palates with regards to games are changing up. People are growing and evolving into what they like. People are getting more discerning. With now, right now has never been. eh, Sorry, let me rephrase it. Let me find my words. Now, in today's day and age, at the point in time we're living in, has never been a better time than right now be a game developer. And the reason why I say that is because there's so many tools that are free. The three most, the three top tools right now are things like Godot or Godot, however you want to pronounce it, Unreal, and even Unity. Despite Unity's, recent snafus, still very popular. And those are all free services that you can use to make games, and people have been using them to make games. Unreal, especially. I mean, some of the games that we're seeing coming out are made in Unreal 5. I'm pretty sure Black Myth Wukong was made in the Unreal 5 engine. The next Cyberpunk game, the project is codename Orion. It's got to be made in Unreal 5. So, these engines that people are using, at the highest level, at the AAA level, you, me, and everyone who has access to a decent computer, you
and
can sit there and make some games.
FYI, you are indeed correct. Black Myth Wukong was made in Unreal Engine
All right,
5.
yeah. I figured I've used Unreal 5 before in the past, and I've still used it today. You can tell. Games that are 3D and very photorealistic, Unreal is pretty much the engine, the default engine that you're going to be using, unless the development studio that you're working with has its own custom built engine, and there's some that do. Um, but Unreal 5 is becoming the de facto default setting for anything that's photorealistic, 3D rendering, stuff like that. But so yeah, Black Myth Wukong is breaking records. It came out the gate swinging, man. And that was only 8 days ago. So it's impressive. It's very very impressive. Another game that has recently launched, and it's going to be a surprise to some of you, considering the amount of shit that we give them. But Blizzard has just launched their this is what, eighth, ninth expansion. Let's see, it's Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, Mist of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, Battle for Azeroth, Shadowlands. 10th. It's their 10th. Their 10th. I had to count. Look, it's a company that's been around for 20 years. Well, more than 20 years, actually. It's an IP that's been around for 30 years because World of Warcraft is not the beginning of the Warcraft universe. It started with the Warcraft RTSs, real-time strategy. For those of you who don't know,
Yep.
um, so it's it's been around for a minute. And I started playing with RTSs. I think I started with Warcraft correctly. But one of my first MMOs was World of Warcraft. So it has a I've had a love hate relationship with the game for many years. Uh,
My first MMO was Final Fantasy Online.
yep, I remember you telling us Final
Yep.
Fantasy. Yeah,
And
Final Fantasy
I
Online.
played before that. I played, and it was LAN connection. So it wasn't like a true MMO, but the original Baldur's Gate you was set up so that you
Yep,
could turn your computer into a server and play with friends type of thing.
yep, yep. Baldur's Gate, Ultima Online, Dark Age of Camelot. Yeah, for those of you who know, World of Warcraft and all those games were not the first. There were the games that came before them that were actual MMOs. Dark Age of Camelot and Ultima Online being the two ones that really come to mind. I'm pretty sure there might be one or two that came out before those two. But anyway, so World of Warcraft, August 26th, so 2 days ago, um, launched their 10th expansion, The War Within. And I've been playing it. I will admit that. As much shit as we give Blizzard, I've been playing it.
Hey, it
And
looks good.
it does, and it plays good. It's honestly it feels like a return to form. It feels like a return to Burning Crusade, to Wrath of the Lich King, when World of Warcraft was really delivering quality gameplay, content, and story. And part of that, I would imagine, is because the new creative director for World of Warcraft and the entire and that whole thing, Chris Metzen. And for those of you who don't know, he was he worked at WoW. Sorry, he worked at Blizzard for a very long time. Back, he actually worked on Vanilla, I believe. He worked on Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, and Cataclysm. So the first three expansions of the game. And I believe he might have even been around when Warcraft, the RTSs were being developed. So he's been around for a while, and he was basically the a lead for those three expansions in the story department. And it shows. It honestly, I'm playing through the campaign right now, and it shows that they've definitely really dialed in the story and really listened to the community, which for those of you who know, they hadn't done for quite a while. They were kind of just putting out stuff. I can say crap. I'm trying to be nice now. Um, but they've put out some steaming, put out a couple steaming piles.
It's choking you, isn't it?
It is, man. It is. It's tough. It's tough to say it because for the longest time they were putting out some steaming piles. Uh, for various reasons, I'm sure. But it seems like they've taken a turn for the better. Basically, this is called what's being called the World Soul Saga. Um, it's going to be over three expansions, so I mean we're looking at a number of years of content. Because an expansion means if they're going, they're continuing as form, it's going to be 6 years, probably maybe a little bit more of
Probably.
solid content of a long running story. Um, so hopefully, hopefully we'll see that. But I've been playing the game. They've released a lot of new content, 4 new zones, the world that they've built, looking really good. Really, it's diverse. It's really, really diverse in that every zone is different, looks different, plays different, different interactions with different characters. Um, they've introduced delves, which reminded me of Elder Scrolls Online, which we've talked about here on the channel quite a bit. But here in World of Warcraft, they play a bit differently. Uh, there's a lot of puzzles. And each delve is very different, but there's puzzles. There's loot to gather. There's tiers, meaning you can increase the difficulty by tier. I think there's 11 tiers right now, but you can only go up to third tier until season 1 officially releases, which isn't going to happen until I believe it's either in September or it's October 10th. It's either like September 3rd or October 10th. I can't remember which of those days is the
There was
uh,
a long, probably a span of like a year, maybe longer, that pretty much all I did on ESO was run dungeons. I log in, do writs, and then just
just
hammer
go your
dungeons
dungeons.
for, yeah.
Oh boy, I bet that was really really not interesting.
Well, for a
After a
while
while.
it was fun for a while. I
Yeah,
mean,
but I mean,
just to,
for initially, yeah,
I,
initially I'm sure it was great, but then after your what 30th time of doing the fucking same dungeon,
just
I
depends
bet.
on what you were, what you wanted to do. And
Yeah,
by hammering dungeons, and I'm a loot guy, so if it's not nailed down, I'm taking it. Um, and that was a really easy way, rather than like running around the countryside trying to farm stuff. You could farm dungeons fairly easily. So that's what I'd do. I'd farm dungeons. Once you in a lot of the dungeons, once you get to know them and you know what loot you get where, I mean, they get to be fairly easy. I could probably run 20 dungeons in an hour.
Jesus,
Some of the
speed
well,
running over here.
the easier ones.
Yeah, the easier ones.
Yeah,
That's fair.
the harder ones take a little bit more, but I mean, you can run through. I don't think there were any at the time that I was playing that I couldn't do in like 20 minutes.
Okay, fair enough. Fair
Just
enough. I
it just
respect it.
depends on what the mechanics were in the dungeon. Because there's a few that had different types of boss fights where you had to run way over here and fight this one, and run way over there and fight, and those take a little while. But
Fair enough.
most of them were
Um,
just hammer your way through to the end and beat the boss, and you're done.
True. That is one thing that I will say about Elder Scrolls content, even in the dungeons. Very samey, very cookie cutter, very
Mm-hmm.
they got repetitive very very quickly. Um, one thing I will say about World of Warcraft current stuff, um, changes it up. They change it up. They're also actually put in a new system where you can, as a player, if because a lot of, ironically enough, there are a lot of players who play MMOs solo, who don't even want, who don't get into group content because they don't want to play with people,
Right?
which is ironic because you're on a massively multiplayer online role playing game, but you want to play it solo. Here's the thing: I can't really give people too much shit because I play solo most of the time until I'm doing group content. Most of my leveling I just do by myself,
Well,
but until I get into group content.
the cool thing about, and I like, most of the time I'll play by myself too, but
Exactly. Yeah.
the cool thing about it is, I mean, in a single player game, the monotony becomes so much, because essentially all the NPC, you know what I mean? After you've been playing for a while, you've seen everything the NPCs do, or
Mm.
you've heard everything they say, and
Yeah.
the having that full world of an MMO with a bunch of other people online playing. Um, Honestly, I liken it to like sitting at the coffee shop, people watching. I mean, kind of what it's like.
Yeah.
Only
Yeah.
they can't
Exactly.
look at you like you're a weirdo in a video game.
Yep.
It's
Because your people watching. Yeah, it's true. That's very true. You're not wrong, man.
and
You are
they're not
not
real
wrong. They
people. I
can't.
mean, so you know,
I mean, they're real people on the other side of those avatars, but the avatars aren't real. You're
right?
correct. So yeah, so those of you who are interested in the War Within, the 10th expansion of World of Warcraft, check it out. I highly recommend it. They they've done a lot of good. It's been getting some positive reviews. They have seemingly listened to the community. From one individual who used to work at Blizzard but left because for his own reasons. And he's very vocal and very honest about you know during the streams that I've watched him play the game, where this is the first expansion that I that he has basically said in a long time he's willing to
Yes,
recommend World of Warcraft to
yes,
people,
yes, Harper. You are.
because
Record
most of the
it.
expansions that have come out lately have been crap. According to this individual, you guys might know him as Pirate Software, but yeah, he endorsed it, and he's not wrong. It says actually pretty solid, pretty solid. Um,
I have not played it yet, but it definitely it looks. But I mean, it's pretty common for the trailers and the ads for World of Warcraft. Most of them look pretty cool. Um,
yeah, that is one thing that they do very well, is the cinematics. They do those very very well. Um, so
it's okay.
those can very.
It sounds like he's a little obstinate in some things. Like pineapple on pizza and wow, somebody's got to make him do
Yeah,
it.
I still can't believe I got caught with that one. But I guess when you're really fucking hungry, you'll eat anything, and anything will taste good. No. But I'm going to step away for a quick second, but I do still have my headset on.
Right.
But we're actually gonna go into our next piece. Greg, do you want to take us into the next piece? Um, that being Brandon Sanderson's new RPG,
Ah,
which is quickly approaching $12.5 million. It's at 12.38
yes.
million dollars right
Well,
now.
that honestly doesn't surprise me because
No.
I mean it is Brandon Sanders, and he's taking a world that he has carefully and skillfully crafted over the years, and making it into a setting in which the fans, or all of us, can tell story in that realm, by creating a tabletop RPG that is focused in that realm, Cosmere. I haven't actually played it yet. I know Rob has a copy. There's a free download copy, or like a Kickstarter that you get, if you go to his website. Um, I would say the easiest way to find that information is just to look it up on Kickstarter, which the Kickstarter is still active for a couple of days, I think. Is that right, Rob? Yeah, you're breaking up, brother. Um, so yeah, go check it out. Get involved with the Kickstarter and support that effort. I definitely new games coming. There's a lot of new games in the TTRPG space, but um, the ones that are really solid, which it sounds, from everything I've seen on this one, it definitely looks like a solid game. And I plan on playtesting it at some point here. Obviously, we're kind of missed the boat on the playtesting for the actual playtesters, but that's okay. We'll playtest it for our audience and anybody who wants to check it out. Um, yeah, sometime here in the near future, we'll be diving into that. Um, Probably after we get launched into our Symborum game, which is coming up very soon. you left me here to talk. Why did you do this? This is horrible.
I
So,
left you there to talk so my pizza wouldn't burn.
gotcha. Okay. So yeah, this Cosmer. There's a lot of information that's out there on it right now, and a couple of key things that I really like about this system. One is that it is, the mechanics of the system are new. They're not like
Hmm.
just a 5e knockoff with the OGL or anything like that. It's new mechanics, and they're designed to be fairly simple mechanics and to keep your gameplay as fluid as possible.
Mm.
Which sounds great. That's ideal to
Yeah,
me. Um,
yeah. It takes away from some of the crunch that we've seen in our traditional, and more. I'm not going to say well-established TTRPGs, although I mean that fit. Things like Pathfinder and D&D obviously are very well established. Can Not going to take anything from them. But like Greg said, the systems in play for the Cosmere RPG, which is I believe the official name is, on on Kickstarter, very fluid, very it keeps things moving. And one of the systems in play that I really really like is called the plot die. Now it's a D6, but it has, if you can either use a traditional D6, one through six, or if you get the actual game, it'll have a specific die that has, on the one and the two, it has a particular mark. Three and four are blank, and then five and six have a now. And what the plot die is, it's something that a DM can use, or a player, so either DM or the player can use to enhance a particular scene. Meaning, if it's very plot specific, or if it's something pertaining to the major plot or a character plot, or even a minor plot. Like if it's something pertaining to a key point in the story from whatever point of view, either the player or the DM can use the plot die to essentially enhance the situation. And let's say basically you roll your plot die, and if it comes up on the one or the two, it's a negative, meaning it's a monkey wrench in your plan. And either the DM, again, I'm can be misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Either the DM can call that monkey wrench in immediately or save it for later. Um, could be wrong on that one, so don't quote me. But basically, it's a mechanic that was put in play and developed. Again, the game is being developed by Brotherwise Games, I believe is the official title of that studio. Um, they're working with Brandon Sanderson and his team, developing the game. And they put that in there because oftentimes, and we've seen it at our table where it's just the DM kind of narrating the whole thing and kind of driving the train, so to speak. And this kind of spreads the burden of the storytelling process between the player and the DM, but it also makes it very much more cooperative, which it should be, because again, any TTRPG is supposed to be a cooperative storytelling. And whether you're playing Pathfinder, whether you're playing D&D, whether you're playing the Cosmere RPG, it's supposed to be a cooperative storytelling process. And I like they've developed something mechanically speaking, tangible, to reinforce that. So that's for me, one of the mechanics I'm looking at testing is the plot die, for sure.
plot die.
Yep, plot die, man.
There are different forms of plot die depending on where you're, what you're looking at. Because I mean, a lot of the Free Leagues engine actually has that with stress
Yes, yeah,
dice.
they do. Yep.
Little different take to. So this is a little different take to that, I think.
Mm. Yep.
And some people find the system with stress dice to be a little off-putting. They feel as though it kind of takes away a little bit of the player agency, because if you get a fail on those stress dice, then things happen that are outside of your control. But the same thing potentially is with this plot die. I just think Cosmere does a little bit better. Another key thing that I like about this system and the way it's designed is that it's designed to be more player centric. um you obviously still have your game master. In the game master's role is to really create that overarching structure, but not necessarily to be the storyteller. You know what I mean? So yes, you're gonna roll that plot die, but then that can be the player in the GM kind of working together on what happens. Not entirely just, okay, you rolled this is what happens.
Yeah.
And that's the free league system is the same way. It's just not necessarily worded that way. I mean, you
Yeah.
can do whatever you want to do between your player and your GM. It's just I prefer systems, you're starting to see this a lot more now. I prefer systems that kind of lean in that direction more. That
Likewise.
promote
Very-
that, or encourage that interaction between the GM and the player, and kind of really kind of lean more towards the story is in the hands of the player, and the GM just creates the framework for it. You're still, as the GM, I mean, you still got to run the game. You still got to make sure the game keeps moving. You still got to provide the backdrop for whatever story is going on. um, but I think player agency, this system promotes player agency better than most, I would say.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, personally.
Things will happen beyond your means, but player still gets to choose how they react to the situation. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
The plot die piece is a that's one way that it could be used, Harper, for sure. Um, Stress dice, I the purpose is kind of the same. It just depends on what. Like, okay, we used it during an Alien game, just to be clear. And you have there's a couple different ways you can play Alien. One of them is more of a cinematic playthrough, which it's designed to create the horror and intensity of the movies. So
Mhm.
yeah, you're a little more likely to have your GM be like, okay, yeah, this is what happens. um I think that really just comes down to between the players and the GM how you want to handle it. I mean, ultimately, it's yeah, that decision lies with the game master.
Yeah.
But
That yeah.
I just my personal opinion here. A really good game master is going to find a way to work that into, hey players, tell me a story. You know, this is your character. I want you to have that control over your character and be able to generate the story around them, working with the other players. Obviously, you don't necessarily want a player that's just going to showboat all the way through the game, but I think it's important, and it definitely it makes play go much smoother, because then the character that character can decide to interact with another character, and the game becomes not so turn based anymore. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
if my character is going to interact with with Harper's character, then I'm essentially sharing my turn with that character, because now they're a part of the scene, whatever's happening. So now they get to do something. You know what I mean? Um, and I like that. It's a lot smoother play system.
I can agree with that to a certain extent. Um, again, I think the introduction of mechanics that enhance the storytelling process from both the GM perspective and the player perspective are definitely a step in the right direction when it comes to our traditional TTRPG fare.
So here's a question
It's
for you,
innovative.
since you've looked at this system more thoroughly. Yeah, I'm not by any means. I'm not saying you have the whole system or anything, but
Mm.
um, what is the recommended game size? You know,
Actually, I don't. I want to say it's your typical 4 players, but honestly, I don't think that's correct. I would imagine I would imagine 4 to 6 players probably being uh maybe the recommended, but I would also imagine that, and as I've come to, I'm coming up on my, let's see, 2000.
one thing I think is a falsehood is that more players makes a better game. I don't think that's true.
Depends, because our personal game now we're back up to 7 players now, so uh, and I would
I don't
argue
think
that
I don't think it's bad. It's just I
yeah.
don't think that more players makes a better game. I
Okay, so
really
you're
don't.
saying inherently more players don't necessarily make a better game.
Yeah.
In that regard, I agree with you because I mean, you you could have a crappy game with 4 players. You could have a great game with 8 players. You could have a crappy game with 8 players and a great game with 4 players.
But with
Um,
8 players, is it going to be a great game for everyone?
uh, I think the larger number
See, you and I
of
have
players,
experienced you and I have experienced like 40 people
yeah,
in a game,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's absolutely ridiculous. You
yeah,
basically have a whole pile of people that are sitting in the background just listening
just
to the
waiting.
story.
Yeah,
Waiting for
we're
somebody
just
to call on them to do something, or they
yeah,
may
we're
go
just
through the entire session with just nothing.
not really doing much.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 100% correct. Um, yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you on that. I don't think in either direction the number denotes the quality of gameplay. I do though agree that there is a critical mass that happens. I mean, there's a point where there's just too many players for everyone to have impactful play at the table in a meaningful amount of time. Just because, again, there's 6 players, 7 players ahead of me before I get to do my turn,
Mhm.
and each of them are doing something that's going to change the landscape of the particular scene. So
But and if you think about even like Dungeons and Dragons world, okay, there's a reason why 4 is the recommended player number. And hey, Infinity Core, um, I'll get this out and then we can take a look at what Infinity Core is offering as well. But I just think about it this way, okay? You have 8 players in this group. So now when you're designing, according to the way you would design an encounter in D&D,
mm,
based on the
mm,
total number of hit dice. Well, 8 players generate a lot of hit dice. Okay, so you're going to have probably multiple monsters in there. Um, Now the potential for more than what it's not like each monster levels off against one player. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Or if you have
yeah,
a really powerful, like 1 or 2 really powerful monsters, those monsters are going to be way overkill on an individual player.
hmm
And they're only there because you have this big party. So you have this big party which sets up this situation where you have to have this really powerful monster
powerful monster.
that
Yep,
can one hit party
yep,
members, you know.
yep.
Um
Yep. I mean, Greg, we intimately deal with that on a regular basis. Because yeah, you either gotta throw a bunch of small enemies at them, which
Hmm.
they're just gonna mow through because they're weak enemies, or you toss stronger enemies that individually can seriously hurt a player. And then you run into instances where, okay, well, the enemy units are going to be working together, so ideally they would jump one guy and just kill him, flat out kill him, before moving on to the next one and doing the same thing. But as a DM, you're like, I can't do that because that's not fun.
I I
That's
agree.
not fun.
I agree with, well, you never know if you're that type of GM where beating up on your players is fun for you,
Well, it's not
not
fun for
fun
the
for them.
players. It's not fun for the players. Might be fun for the DM, not necessarily fun for the players.
Infinity Core, I definitely, yes. Um, the how many a GM can handle thing, I think, is definitely, there's a question mark out there, because there's I've met a lot of, well, not a lot, but I know some GMs that think they can handle huge groups with no problem. And
Yeah.
if the only thing if the only thing involved is making sure everybody gets a turn and not really creating any depth in the story, then yeah, I could handle a big group. I've had big groups before, huge groups, 15, 20, 40 plus. Different format, not TTRPG. Um, but I think when it comes to TTRPGs, most of them, and there's a reason why they're designed around like a 4 to 6 player, or less sometimes. Um, and the reason behind that is the flow of play, for one, based on if you're running the system the way it's designed to be run. Um, and for two is the what we are just talking about, which is the way you design encounters. Um, because that's, you get too many people, and especially if you get, let's say you get into fourth, fifth level. Let's just say that's pretty. Most people are going to make it past fourth or fifth level.
Yeah.
So let's say fourth or fifth level, you get a group of 8 players in there. Suddenly you have a huge, that's a pretty good sized pile of hit dice that you got to design an encounter around to balance it. But is it truly balanced? Because depending on how you make that encounter, you're either going to make a lot of mobs, which the
Mhm.
problem then becomes that if those mobs gang up on 1 or 2 player characters, suddenly you have a death situation for your player characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you have to go,
Typically, yeah.
or you have to go with mobs that are really over the power level for the individual player characters. So now they're fighting something that they can only defeat as a team. And every time this thing scores a hit on a player character, it's,
Could kill him.
potentially a death blow, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's where that problem comes in. And as a GM, you got to figure out how to balance that, for sure. Lord
Mhm.
Jesus is got an idea on here as well. 6 or 7. Harper. I mean, I agree with what you're saying too. I mean, we're one of our personal games. Well, actually, all 3 of our personal games right now are ranging between 5 and 7 players.
Yep.
Um, so, and that's definitely, it's doable, but there are some challenges behind the scenes to that.
Mhm.
And that's just something that the DM has to deal with, has to figure out, okay, how do I make this encounter balanced so that I'm not one hitting my players, because that's no fun for anybody. I don't want to one hit my players, and I want them to be able to turn this into a story and actually tell story around this, what's going on. So I got to create a nice balance to it. Sometimes the way something I've done in the past is I've tried to layer the encounter, so you'll only encounter like a certain amount of hit dice, and then once you've had a chance to kind of defeat some of those mobs, then I'll layer in the next layer, so that it's not like a all at once. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
the fights will be in phases, which I've done. I've done the same thing. Reinforcements get called, things like that, and or the boss has a phase 2 or something like that. Um, and I think being creative and being able to adjust, like that, is a benefit for any DM.
but are really Lord Jesus? When you ran Cyberpunk 2020, everyone was consistently wanting to go in different directions. That never happens, man.
It never happens at the table.
That's
What are
a
we talking
really
about?
odd situation.
Everybody's always cooperative and playing together for
They do
for the
exactly
common
what they're
goal.
supposed to do to keep the adventure
Yep.
moving forward. Yeah.
Yep.
Where are those players at? I want to find those players.
Oh yeah. Boy, oh boy.
No,
We've
I
yeah.
feel your pain, brother, for sure.
Yeah, we've definitely had to corral some players
Yeah, shiny.
uh every so often. Yeah, it happens. And here's the thing. As a player and as a DM, you know, uh, there is, at least in my opinion, there is an unwritten rule between the players and DM where the DM is overseeing a story and the players are going to play within that story. And granted, they're going to play. Obviously, they're playing characters, so they're going to do their best to act out the character that they've built, the nuance therein within the confines of the world and the story. But there is definitely an unwritten, kind of an unspoken contract that the DM is going to present the story and the players are going to play through that story. And ideally, the players are going to play their characters and do what their characters normally would do, but they're going to do so in a mostly cooperative
Mhm.
manner and mostly furthering the story along the way. Um, will there be some tangents? Absolutely. Will there be some snafus and finagling? Of course. Will there be some inner tension between the party members that might cause friction? I hope so, because that
There
makes for
should
good
be.
storytelling.
There should
Yeah,
be.
it makes some for good storytelling. But ideally, everyone will be moving in the same general direction, maybe not on the
I
same road,
I
kind of deal.
I absolutely despise when you're in a group and suddenly you get this player group think going on, and
Yeah.
everybody's doing things just based on what they as a player think is the right thing to do for the group, instead of playing their character.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Play your character,
I'm
and as a
right.
DM, allow your players to play their characters. Give them moments.
I have a
And
lawful evil character in a relatively good group, which I'm not saying I do or anything. I might. But if I do, I am going to
uh-huh.
be my lawful evil character, regardless of what me as a player. I'm looking at the situation and saying, "Geez, this would be really helpful to the group." But then I got to put myself in the headspace of my character, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck. It doesn't help me, so no, not
Can
doing that.
confirm Greg is in fact playing questionable. Let's
I
put it
do,
that way.
yes, I do. In fact, have a lawful evil character in an otherwise all goody two shoes group. But you'll have that. Adds a little spice.
Yeah, and I as a DM like the character.
Yes, you do actually. Yeah, she plays a character in that same group. But her character's got some unique pieces as well. But she's just been a lot more. We all know what those unique pieces are as
Yep.
players. But
Yeah, as the players, and that is a another piece to the whole
yeah,
role playing role playing puzzle.
It
One of the other
depends on how
things
you
that
play them. I mean, lawful evil doesn't have to be a psychopath. I mean,
hmm,
they don't have to be.
true, true. One of the other things that I'm actually really looking forward to about the Cosmere RPG is the fact that it's a living RPG. Um, and what and this is I'm going to read it right off of the Kickstarter. Brandon Sanderson's existing books provide enough material for years of Cosmere RPG releases, and they do. He's written upwards of 20 books, probably more.
Mhm.
And each series of books, each cluster of books takes place in the Cosmere, his universe that he's built. So there's plenty of material there. But anyway, and the scope of the Cosmere will continue to increase as he writes new novels. The Cosmere RPG has been designed as a flexible framework that can accommodate any story, from shard blades to firearms, from airships to starships, from simple fabrials to awakened technology. Those are elements within the stories that he's read. Because of that shared DNA and the fact that the system's rules are based on Brandon's well-defined rules of investiture, the system is ready for worlds to collide. I think that it is an absolutely fantastic piece that at least I have not seen in very many TTRPGs. A living world, meaning the world is continuously evolving. There's going to be continuously focused novelization of the world that you're inhabiting. Now, okay, you can and people can easily point to D&D and the Forgotten Realms and the Driss books and all that stuff. Cool. But you never see that character in a D&D campaign. Well, I believe he's in one, which is Rime of the Frost Maiden, because it takes place in Icewind Dale. I believe is he might show up in that one. But those novels aren't necessarily adding to the world of D&D. Oftentimes, the world, especially the Forgotten Realms, existed and was created. First of all, it was created by Ed Greenwood, who is a fantastic storyteller and designer, but it was created long before those books ever came out.
So apparently, Brandon Sanderson, sorry, has written or collaborated on 431.
What? He's written and or collaborated on 431.
He's written 71 himself.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, this dude sounds like he's locked in the attic all the time.
They don't let him out of the basement. He's got his fucking publisher and editor. Get down there and write more books.
Boy, Jesus. I say boy.
Seriously, god damn. Well, to be fair, I actually follow his YouTube channel, and he's honestly, I think the guy just loves to write, because he's always working. He's always putting out stuff. He's always working on so I think he just dropped a new novella, based on something, probably one of the other books or other series of books. And before that, I know he was writing something. He's been writing like this secret series that he's not really doing much, not publishing, much advertising for. So, he's always working on something.
Infinity, I think we could probably do an episode just on alignment, and really talking about the different alignments, and I like the alignment. Maybe I'm old school this way, but I like the alignment system because it gives some detail about character. It gives you a basis to go off of. And most systems now have kind of they don't really address that piece to it. You just kind of do your own thing, act the way you want to act. And I get that too. I'm fine with that. But the old alignment system for D&D, I did actually really enjoy that piece. I think we could probably do a whole episode just talking about alignment and impact on the game and
We
ways that
could,
it
and I
can
completely agree with you, Greg.
be used, because I think it's a lost piece of the lore of tabletop RPGs. Um,
It is, especially well. I'm with you in the sense that I respect alignment. I like it. I think it helps with character identity.
mhm.
But also, at least in the system that D&D has, kind of, but mostly had, especially in third edition and 3.5, it it identified classes. Like class identity was tied to it. If you were a paladin of Tyr, Tyr was, lawful. I'm pretty sure he was lawful
Yeah,
good.
yep.
Can't remember.
Saint Cuthbert.
And but he had, yeah, he had certain things that you had to do as a paladin of Tyr, or a cleric of Tyr.
Right.
You had certain things you had to do. Hell, they even had specific weapons that gave you bonuses if you're using. Um, but they did away with that, and eh, I'm lukewarm on that. I really don't like that. It's because it's too open ended. Like, divine characters like clerics and paladins take their powers from divine entities. I
Right.
mean, it's in the fucking name, divine smite. I'm sorry, the concept of justice
Okay. Okay. Come on now.
is not a deity. The fucking concept.
Well, the idea of divinity in early systems was good, and there was a lot that was created around that. I mean, it's not just about the clerics or the paladins. I mean, you could
Yeah,
have
the
you could
entire
have
worlds, entire
think about it
orders.
from this way. You have Robin Hood. So is
Yeah.
Robin Hood an evil thief?
No, he's a chaotic good thief, meaning he does what he does for the from his perspective for the greater good. You know,
Right.
the rich can afford to lose the money because they're rich.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, Infinity.
Well, that's the thing, Infinity. I was actually just about to touch on that. You have deities that espouses specific concepts. Like, again, go back to Tyr. His was lawful good, so justice, upright, being forthright, and helping the needy. All concepts which now, in the current D&D setting, you can pledge yourself to and get divine favors. Those are already baked into those deities. They already had they were like, if you go back to 3 and 3.5 and you read up on those gods, they told you, yeah, such was, values this and this. So those are already in the game. What WotC decided to do was, let's get rid of the gods. Like, why? They added an extra layer, but they know what they're doing.
We're too opinionated to just not complain about something. I mean,
I
you
mean,
got to
it's
have a little bit
it's
in there. I mean,
it's it's not necessarily a complaint; it's a critique. Because
okay.
again, people are gonna play how they're gonna play. I'm sure people were probably. I would wager the reason why they got rid of them, people were probably homebrewing them out, or homebrewing. Hey, I want to be a paladin of this thing. So WotC, all right, let's just make it mechanically applicable where you could just be whatever. That's fine.
Mhm.
But eh, for me personally, they definitely fumbled the bag on that one. Like the gods and their alignments and that perspective when it came to clerics and paladins and even druids, um, I thought was
Well,
really
you
cool.
think about the setting that you're playing in. I mean, essentially, it's there's parallels between our historical
Yes.
path and the historical path in the D&D realm, and in essence, they're more of a medieval style realm. Um, and I'm not, I don't want to necessarily position them there, but I mean that's the main basis of it is it's somewhere in that realm, the medieval society, and the unfortunate part is that a large part of the influence that we see in the West when it comes to medieval society is Christianity, Catholicism, um, kind of dominated the European society. Now you do see some paganism, things like that, in different you know different variations of Christianity, obviously, but that doesn't mean that that was all there was, because that's not true. Africa had a whole list of different deities and things that they worshipped in voodoo and hoodoo, and each one of those particular belief systems had their own list of deities or powers to be praised or worshipped. That's not even going into the Eastern cultures. China, India, Japan, Australia. Any of those countries, Nepal, Tibet, and all the different religious sects that belonged there, and that they had. Even the Mongolians had their own belief systems. Um, so
Maybe they did.
it absolutely makes sense that the world would have these things, and that there would be different pantheons of gods, um, and the way it was created to interact with the characters. Where, okay, you can play a paladin, but you don't have to okay, take the paladin and make them a subclass of clerics, and then that whole concept of it, because every deity has their own paladins, every deity has their own clerics, and the benefits that they grant to their faithful can be different, whether that's the combat styles, just the physical characteristics that they grant to them, their spell capabilities. The only trade-off is really that you have to follow whatever the precept of that pantheon is. And I mean, there's some of the evil gods like Demogorgon and things like that from the first deities and demigods. They had some pretty strange requirements.
Mm.
But and then your alignment. I mean, if your god is a god of chaos, then you're going to be chaotic, and if they're evil, then you're going to be chaotic evil. That's a requirement.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're not going to necessarily be a lawful good paladin following a a god of chaos. You know what I mean? That just doesn't make any sense. So,
and Infinity Core, you do bring up a very good point, in that some alignments for some individuals would be more difficult to play, um,
yeah.
and that's okay. That for me, that's all right. If it's difficult for you to
Well,
play a chaotic,
here
character that, you know,
here's the other thing to that is, I mean, even and let's just use chaotic. Well, I don't want to use chaotic evil. Let's use lawful evil as
yeah,
as the as the basis here. I mean, even as a lawful evil character, I mean, you don't necessarily, not every single thing you do has to be lawful evil. I mean, you can act in ways that are not part of your alignment. The idea to it is to always tie it back to your alignment. So I could act like a lawful good character. Absolutely. I could do something that would otherwise be considered chaotic. Absolutely. If it benefits me. If I think that it benefits me. I'm still acting as lawful evil, but I'm going to do something that is uncharacteristic. I could even I could be lawful evil and pretend to be lawful good. If it's benefiting me, I'm still lawful evil. I'm not lawful good. And that's
well, also as long as it's within the confines of the law. That was also one of the big things for lawful. That they operated within the law. Basically, think of you a sleazy politician.
Mhm.
operate within the restriction of the law, but they're not necessarily doing the right thing.
Right.
So
That's the. I think it's just a misconcept that this idea that if you're like chaotic evil, then everything you do just has to be chaos and evil. Period. I don't. That's not. I don't feel like that's true. And if you want to go by the letter of how the descriptions of the alignments were written, okay,
sure.
maybe it would make sense that a character would have to act a particular way all the time, every day, from the time they wake up to the time they go to sleep. Maybe they even snore at night like they're chaotic evil. I'm not sure.
So to me, that doesn't. First of all, that's not realistic. Secondly, that doesn't allow for good character growth, one way or the other. Personally, so I, as a DM,
Right, right.
with that particular thing in mind, I would never require the characters to always be acting,
There,
chaotically.
there was I don't know
Or
if the mechanics. I assume it doesn't because alignment's been pretty well taken out of the system through 5e. But
yeah,
like in the early systems, advanced Dungeons and Dragons, so 1, 2, 3. There was also a mechanic in there that would shift your alignment. So if potentially if you were playing a character that was lawful good, but you continuously did evil things, then there was always the potential that the DM would essentially make you
swap,
swap your
swap your
alignment.
alignment.
Right. Um, I understand that mechanic. That's one mechanic that I never really cared for too much.
No,
No, not really. I mean,
you don't think it would make sense?
I
If
think
you
it's
are
important
behaving in
to
a
if I have a player that's playing their character completely uncharacteristically to the way they designed the character, then I think it's important that I have a conversation with them about it and find out why they're doing that. And hopefully through that conversation they come to the realization themselves that okay, yeah, maybe this character isn't really what I first created them to be, and maybe I want to change it now. Versus me saying, "Hey, your character's acting lawful evil, so it's lawful evil now." You know what I mean?
well,
I would rather just point it out to the player and have the conversation with them and just see, for one thing, they may be doing something that I don't understand. Maybe they have a point behind what they're doing and I just don't understand the point. And I just need to gain understanding of why they're playing the character that way. And once I can understand it, then it's like, oh, all right, well, let's see where this goes.
yeah, it makes more sense at that point.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, again, as you said, we can have a whole episode on just D&D character alignments that used to be in the game. Because for me, they were a very, very, very interesting mechanic that I wish that they had left, like officially left in. Obviously, as a DM, you can do what you want at your own table. So I definitely at our table there is alignment, and I do make sure my players adhere to the alignment that they've chosen. I'm going to lock them in there, but I do expect you to play to that alignment because in my mind, it determines your character's disposition with regards to things.
So let's talk about this really quick. Um, okay, I think that's the recent one, right, Harper? So the mind sync that ends up happening with a party or a group where players will do basically they start to do the group think where they'll do things just because the majority of the group wants to do this, so they'll have their character do this. um what do you think of that, Rob? You and I deal with this pretty
Yeah,
continuously.
a lot. Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is, from a DM perspective, how do I feel about players not necessarily playing their characters, but falling into,
That group mentality, that group thing,
yeah,
as
kind
a
of that
as a
hive mind.
player, not the
Yeah,
character.
as a play. Yeah, exactly. Like the character is not play. The character is no longer in the driver's seat. You as a
Right.
player are now in the
I
driver's seat.
it feels
I
it feels a lot
uh,
like I want to be liked as the player, so my character has to be liked too. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Where instead of playing your character, you as a player are making decisions now to, in most cases, to not be disruptive of a particular plan, or a particular agreed upon, major like maybe the majority of characters or players have agreed to do a thing, but your character would maybe not go along with that, maybe do something different, yet you as the player decide, hey, I'm not going to rock the boat, the character's going to do the thing. That's disappointing. And again, I'm not trying to be negative or anything like that. I mean, hey, if that's your decision, that's your decision. But as a DM, when I see that, it is a little disappointing, because those the friction, and again, I'm not saying, all out, like, player versus player combat, but the friction that can evolve from that character interaction, the antagonistic approach, in the sense that, hey, I'm my character wouldn't do that, so he's not going to, he's going to do this different thing, or she's going to do this different thing, that may or not, may be oppositional to the vast majority of the group, and that's okay. I think players need to get comfortable with that. Both players need to get comfortable with doing that, if that's what their character would do. And players on the other side of that line need to get comfortable with the other players at the table doing that, and understanding that if that's how their player would react, their player should, and I would even say is obligated to react in that manner, because that's true to the character.
Hmm.
Now, as a player, you can be a little annoyed. That's fine, whatever. But understand that it's the character being the character. It's the story
Right.
telling itself.
Right. And that's it's a hard balance.
It
Um,
is.
and a lot of that's because you have to draw a line between you and your character first off, but you also have to understand that those you're a unique individual, so is that character. um and in telling the story of that character, you gotta be true to what would that character do, how would that
Yeah.
character you know interact in this case.
Mhm.
I think from a player standpoint, a good player can do both at the same time. They can play that character the way the character, make decisions based on, okay, my character's not okay with this. I don't think that sitting around the campfire right now singing Kumbaya is the right thing to do. So I'm not going to do that. But does it mean that my character's just going to, take off and strike out on their own? No, not necessarily. I mean, I might just be the one who decides to go lay in my tent and go to sleep for the
Yep.
night.
Instead of
Or
participate.
right.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just volunteer for guard duty just so I don't have to deal with all the
Kumbaya bullshit.
yeah. Yeah.
I'll go sit watch while you guys,
You go ahead and
uh,
do all that stuff. I'm gonna go over here and make sure that nobody kills you while you're doing all that. But that's kind of, yeah, that's I think it's a very common thing that happens, is that the player mindset gets in there, and then suddenly you have this idea that the whole group needs to do these things, or the whole group needs to. One thing that I find challenging is, I a lot of times, and I I run the game a little differently. I can be a little more crunchy with my players in the sense that I will take a fuck around and find out approach to it. I mean,
He does
I don't.
very much so.
I am not aiming to kill them. As a matter of fact, I will go out of my way to make sure I don't kill the character unless they really press the issue. Then if you get yourself killed, you get yourself killed.
I
But
think Greg, you're being too nice.
I don't want to kill players. That's the thing. I don't really want to kill player characters, but I will. I have. I mean,
Yeah.
I prefer not to because that story ends right there. You know what I mean? And that
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
can be emotionally challenging for the player as well, especially if they put a lot of time and energy into developing that character and that backstory and playing that character, and they've done a really good job with playing that character, and then suddenly it's gone. That can be, that can be a challenge for people, absolutely. So I try to avoid that. But what I run into is because they know that there's going to be something, you know what I mean? They're going to get engaged by something. I tend to have to fight with the party to break them up because they all want to, you know what I mean? It's like all 6 of them are like in each other's back pocket all the way through. All the way through.
Like yeah, you have there again. I think it circles back to the earlier comment of like that group mentality within the game. You know, I think it stems from people in general being conflict averse. Because again, if you do something that's going against the majority group, or your characters, doing their own thing, or whatever the case might be, there's going to be some pushback from the other characters, but sometimes even from the other players. Which, again, at the table, there has to be a clear distinction between characters and players, and that goes, I think, with maturity in the hobby. Playing playing games and playing with different groups of people, and learning that you are not your character and your character is not you, and what you do or what your character does not reflect on you. Yes, you made a decision to do that, but you're
Right.
again in keeping with the character that you've built. And I think I'm not going to say all, but there are definitely some who cannot understand that division. Um, and I know we all get invested in our characters and the story, and if things are going a little too haywire, it can get frustrating. But guys, understand that everyone's just acting out a role. Um, they're just acting out a role.
Yes.
So Harper says, if you're going to choose to go off on your own, don't expect the story to shift to you and focus on just your character. Be respectful of the fact that there are other players that have a part in the story too. That's very true. That is very, very true. Yes. Just because your character decided to do a thing, you know what? The other players, or rather the other characters and the other players, can be like, okay, fine, your character does that. We're going to go this way. Good luck. That could happen.
Right. Sometimes it's necessary that happens.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's good RP. It's
Yep.
I definitely would not want to discourage entirely that behavior. What I don't want is as a DM, what I don't want is I don't want to feel like I have to herd cats all the time. That's more stressful than anything else, and annoying for the players because it slows the pace of the game down tremendously. If you have a split party, especially, I would say that another reason why smaller parties. If you have a split party, I mean, you don't necessarily, if you've got 6 players, you don't want your party to split in 6 different directions.
Yeah.
Because
Ideally, it's 2 teams of 3.
well, and and you're going to have, because the game is going to slow way down at that point, because you're going to have to deal with each individual in a full scenario. I mean, you're going to have to create that scenario, play those NPCs, and you're going to have 6 sets of NPCs that you're going to have to play, um,
Mhm.
in 6 separate stories all at the same time. And that can be done, but it's unless it's some really, really engaging story that's going on, you're probably going to lose most of your people. Not like they're not going to ever play with you again, but I mean, at least for that session, they're gonna drift off and just become
Yeah, you're
bored.
gonna check out.
Yeah. Um,
Speaking of,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but
Go for it.
I'm curious as the audience. Um, what are your guys' thoughts on this? I know Harper's been chiming in. Infinity Core, what about you? Rodicious, Lord Jesus, what do you guys think? And anybody else who's listening, what do you think of this particular piece that we've been discussing? Um, because I mean, assumably you guys are either players or DM, so this is definitely something y'all can chime in on. And I definitely want to hear what you guys got to say.
We're gonna sit here quietly until you do. Oh, never mind.
All right. So what do you think about Infinity Core to answer your question there? Players, the phenomenon of kind of a groupthink mentality when it comes to RPGs. And what I mean by that is oftentimes you'll find in typically stressful or confrontational situations or situations where a major choice has to be made, that instead of playing their character, especially if that character would be antagonistic to said choice, players will opt to kind of take the driver's seat and go with the flow as opposed to playing their characters. What's your take on that? Myself and Greg have kind of chimed in on that, where as DMs and players, but mostly as DMs, we want to see more players play their characters. If your character would do your oh, he's evil. I find situations where I can break that up. Okay, well we know where Infinity Core stands. He's an agent of chaos. He just wants to watch the world burn. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Hey, man, I got a front porch and a beer.
Yeah, right. Let me go be a fly on the wall with your game so I can watch the world burn with you. Um, okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Is there a particular reason why? Do you like and Greg? I don't want to speak for you, but I think Greg and I are both in agreement where those instances where there is kind of some friction, there is an antagonistic pushback from one or more characters, leads to better storytelling, both for the character and the group as a whole. Is that the reason why you kind of encourage this as both the player and a GM, Infinity Core?
I, while he's pretty quick with the typing.
It is.
There are times when the group can be good, but there are times where the characters should shine. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I tend to agree with that statement. Yeah, sometimes you gotta step outside. You have to. If you feel your character would do a thing, go do the thing, even if the rest of the players slash characters at the table are like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Well,
Well,
he,
as a GM though, you do have to look for those moments where you can shine the light on, and all of your characters, not
yes,
just one particular character. You do have to look for those moments where you can create a spot in the story that this character is just going to shine. That's it's their moment to be the key character. And that's important, and it's important for the entire group. That's it does tend to be your more vocal players, the ones who are have the stronger personality that end up working themselves into those positions.
Yes, yeah, that tends to happen quite a bit. Where you'll
But that's part of the challenge of being the GM, is figuring out how to do that. Figuring out how to create that moment for the players that are less aggressive. They have ideas about their character as well, and things that they want to do, and they're probably quite proud of that. Well, hopefully they're quite proud of that character.
mm,
So you in that sense, you got to help them sometimes. Find that spotlight, where they can shine, where they can do their thing.
yeah, and each again, that's going to be player specific, character specific. But yeah, that and again, that does lend itself to the whole conversation that we're it's kind of started this of player size, party size, party size. Um, the larger the party, the harder it gets to kind of do that individual spotlight shining. You know.
I think character friendships. Okay, um, character friendships, I think, is the easier path for sure. Character
Oh
conflicts
yes,
are I do like, in the party, I do like there to be some tension. You know what I mean? Some conflict. Um,
yes.
Rather
Sure.
than the happy get along gang that just you know
Mm-hmm.
floats through everything. I think a
Well,
little
so
conflict
Infinity.
is good.
Oh yeah, conflict is also always good. So case in point, and this is Infinity Corp. For those listening, the long-running D&D campaign I'm in right now, we came across a wagon of explosives, explosive elixir, and nearly died when my character went scouting into an enemy camp of several thousand. The rest of the party didn't wait for me to come back. Let's say my character was livid that they did that, and I played that out, and that's good. Again, you're leaning into your character and what and how they would react and what they would do in a given situation. And I think too often, from what I've and again, I can't speak for every table, I can't speak for every player or GM, but from what I've read and heard and seen, in some cases, a lot of people do fall into that. Well, I'm just going to follow the path of least resistance. I'm going to go with the flow. And guys, we're here to tell stories. We're here to shake shit up. We're here to do the fun thing. So do it.
Right. Have fun, tell a story. One more quick topic on this while we're on it, because we run a lot of games, and we're working on several different concepts right now. um how about backstory? I mean, I think we could, that's another thing that we could probably do a whole episode on, but it really, if we touch on that really quickly, because I that is usually, for some folks, creating backstory for a character is challenging. Um,
Me, me. I have a
well,
challenge with that.
why is that, man?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't. I don't. I've always kind of had always had a tough time pulling ideas from nothing. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But given a premise or given something to work off of, like initial character interactions or particular setting, I can build something. Like basically once I have the clay, I can mold it. It's getting the clay that's the problem.
I agree with you, Infinity. If backstory is I don't want to say the fun part, but it is a very fun part of creating a character, for sure.
Yeah. Like most of my character backstories and character like traits and stuff like that have come about through active role play and kind of on the spot decisions of like, okay, yeah, this is how they are, this is why it is. I've rarely ever write anything beforehand.
There's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything
Oh no,
wrong with
no, no, yeah.
creating that backstory. Let it develop as you go. You know what I mean? I
Exactly.
kind of make it
That's
up as
kind of
you
been
go,
my
kind of thing. But yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of been my approach, and it's worked for me. Some people like to write, super intricate backstories that's pages long, and everybody's accounted for. Me, I'm like, man, this is the guy, this is the general premise, and as he goes through, um, as the characters go through their journeys and their trials and tribulations, a story develops from that I then start, plugging backwards, kind
some
of like reverse engineering.
absolutely. Well, and sometimes creating too in depth of a backstory ends up locking you into something that
Uh huh.
you may later on, especially once you start interacting with the other characters in the story, you may later on look at that and be like,
Want to change?
ah, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Yeah.
Yep.
And there's, it's your backstory. You can change it if you want to. I mean, I realize, there's some folks out there like, once it's written down, that's that. That's what it is for your character. Not necessarily. I don't think that you have to be that strict with a backstory. You want to make some adjustments to it, make some adjustments to it. Um, and it's a completely viable option to create that backstory. I would suggest this. Start out with just a basic concept, and you can take that basic concept just right out of whatever system you're playing. Maybe as you read through the players portion, or you read through the classes or the races, it gave you there's a spark there. It's like, okay, I really want to play this.
Yep.
Great.
Pretty much.
Start with that basic idea as your backstory. I'm a wood elf. I hang out in the trees all day. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Go
then
from there.
right, and then let it develop as you go. And it also leaves a lot of openness that way. So you're not locking yourself into this, long melodramatic story or whatever you end up writing. I find that people that create big backstories right out, and I don't think this is bad. I love reading this stuff, and I think it's great, especially when they create some really intricate backstory, and you get to read through that, and you're like, wow, I really want to see how this plays out. That's awesome. But most of the time, when a person creates a really really well developed backstory, it is generally a sad tale. It's
Yeah.
some tale about loss, and I've never seen anybody create I don't
A
think.
good one.
Oh yeah, well, no, I'll just say I've never seen anybody create a backstory that is full of action and adventure and happy thoughts. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
True. Neither have I. Neither have I, actually.
Yeah. All right, man. Unless you got something else, I think we could wrap this up tonight.
Yeah, no, that was it, man. That was a good conversation. I know it kind of moved towards the TTRPG and aspects of that, but like, hey, that's what we do. Um, it's a good conversation, and it's a
Pain and suffering is what changes us. I agree with you, man. It is.
no,
Um, it's the thing that sticks in our mind is pain, joy, and,
pain.
and good,
Pain is a great teacher.
that feel good peace, that dopamine hit.
That fades really quickly.
It does. It does.
Yep. Yep.
Pain does not.
Especially,
Pain sticks
especially,
with you.
especially in today's day and age, because we're always getting that dopamine hit with the whole social media piece. But that's a topic of conversation for a different stream. um, but yeah, you're right. You're completely right. Infinity Core pain is one of the things, if not the thing, that sticks with us the most.
All right. I'm
But
gonna I'm gonna set up a raid here into
okay.
somebody. Let's see.
So while Greg's doing that, um, yeah, that's episode 66, guys, of the update log. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for interacting with us. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on the topics today discussed. You guys are why we do what we do and why we come here every Wednesday and occasional Thursdays to get together and tell some story and discuss story and gameplay and games and the things that bring us all together to have a good time, every once in a while. Um, You guys keep doing what you're doing. Be safe. I believe that is the end of the episode.
All right, we're gonna raid
Yes.
into Legends of Avatros tonight.
Alright.
Awesome guys, awesome group.
Yeah.
Tell some great story. They have their own TTRPG that they
Yeah.
introduced just earlier this year.
Yeah.
Um,
Called the Crooked Moon. It's based on folklore and legends from modern universe with a fantastical twist. It's fifth edition compatible. Um,
so check them out, show them some love.
yeah.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. We really appreciate you all, and we'll see
Is
you next Wednesday,
yeah.
if not before.